The idea that it's changing the climate of the planet is insane. Talking of which, I've learned many things in the last 20 years, and I've learned this. If Al Gore's involved, it's a scam. End of story. Of course they give him the Oscar for his rubbish, ludicrous documentary. Of course he gets the Nobel bloody Peace Prize, because the people that want this thing out there control who gets those things. And we have, oh, you know, if it's a scam, Madonna's singing on the bloody stage as well, it seems to me. This is the great Earth concerts around the world, selling a lie. These people do no research. And here's the global warming survival handbook for those live Earth concerts, written by David de Rothschild. You know, computers have a common kind of theme all over the world. Shite in, shite out. That's what computer models are, right? If you put rubbish data in, you're going to get ridiculous data out, and that's what these climate models are. And the idea is to scam us into a state of survival and a state of giving our power away, more and more taxation, more and more international law to dictate to us what we can and cannot do on the basis of saving the planet. New World Order to save the Earth. The Earth don't need saving. If you mess with it too much, you'll kick your butt off it. No need saving. Bigger than you are. Do you know sometimes when I go outside and it's cloudy and the clouds move and the sun comes out, it gets warmer. Have you noticed that? I think the sun and warmth have some connection. I feel it in my water. The sun sends out sunspots in cycles, a lot and then less, and now virtually none in the recent end of the cycle. And some of them are as big as Jupiter, and most are bigger than the Earth. They're massive. And they shoot out this solar radiation that comes to the Earth, and it's warm and it's less warm depending on the cycles of the sun. They're just incredible, and they do it in cycles, like I say. And the more sunspots that are produced, the more solar radiation stands back in amazement, the warmer that cycle is. And as it goes down into the lower part of the cycle, the temperature starts to fall. That's what has been happening throughout history, and that's what's happening now. Now, there may be other things going on in the sun. I think there probably are at the time as well, but they have nothing to do with what comes out of your exhaust pipe. In the period, because temperatures have been falling year on year now, as one scientist said, how many years has temperature got to fall before we realize there's no global warming? It's a scam. They're not interested in the truth. But when it was, the temperatures were going up a little bit, it was pointed out, quite rightly, that temperatures were going up on other planets and moons of the solar system as well. I mean, you know, what was causing that? You know, turbocharged handcarts, maybe. And when David de Rothschild appeared from his handbook on the Alex Jones show, he was asked about this, and he said, my friend, it's because... he was asked about Saturn and Mars and warming as well, and he said, because, my friend, those planets are closer to the sun. Huh? That's what you're dealing with. So, if you go back 1,000 years, 800 years, we went through what was called the medieval warm period, when temperatures were significantly higher than they are today, okay? So there's the turbocharged handcarts that were causing them. Those 4x4 bloody handcarts, what were they doing? And then, after the medieval warm period, we went into what scientists call the Little Ice Age. And a lot of the, you know, people say, it's the warmest year since records begun. And you say, when did records begin? 1864? That's 10 seconds ago in climate cycles on the Earth. And what they've done is picked it up as we were coming out of the Little Ice Age, and then comparing that temperature with now and saying, ooh, look at the gap. During the Little Ice Age, it was so cold, the Thames froze over, and they used to have ice fairs on the Thames every year. And here we go. This is from the Little Ice Age up to what? After the 1950s. The green line is sunspot activity. The red line is Earth temperature. As Al Gore would say in his documentary, I think there's some connection. Then we pick it up from 1860 up to the present day, and again, the green is sunspot activity, and the red is Earth temperature. Now, if you look at it, from 1940 to about 1975, temperatures were falling to such an extent that the BBC was doing documentaries on the dangers of a coming ice age. And after the 1940s, sunspot activity dropped in relation to that, and then started picking up, and so did Earth temperature. Like I say, I think there's some connection. This is a guy who is not a representative of oil companies or anything like that. Is a guy called Peter Taylor, who was represented as an advocate of Greenpeace. He's a green environmentalist. I watched his presentation a few months ago in England. This is what he said. Behind the scenes, there's major disagreement among scientists. I know that. Parallel to carbon dioxide rising, the solar field has increased by over 200% since 1900, and this is not factored into computer models. Global temperature is not rising as predicted. In fact, it fell by a whopping 0.6 degrees over the last 12 months, as much as it had gained in the previous 50 years. Many of the apparently random fluctuations in past temperature, like when the Vikings grew crops in Greenland, correlate with variations in the solar electric field. Between 1983 and 2001, cloud cover, according to the International Satellite Cloud Climatology Project, fell by 4%, more than enough to heat oceans and account for global warming. A spate of recent science shows that temperature oscillations are timed by solar cycles, that the jet stream is affected by the solar wind, and that past high and low points in the solar cycle correlate with past temperature swings. It's the bloody sun. And temperatures have been dropping in recent years because the solar sunspot cycle has been going through a real low point, to the point where this British newspaper announced global warming could stop naturally for 10 years, say scientists. Oh, but when it starts again, ooh, we're in trouble. Oh, yeah. Have you noticed, too, global warming is not the term anymore because temperature's falling. Climate change is the new one. That's the new buzzword now. Oh, poor old Al. This guy, James Hansen, who's a close associate of Al Gore from NASA, he has been exposed for making up temperature changes to make them seem higher than they are by changing the months around to make one month seem to be really warm when it shouldn't be, when it was taken from a month which was just a normal temperature. And this is what one of his colleagues says, like he's a close associate of Al Gore. One of his colleagues at NASA. Hansen was never muzzled, even though he violated NASA's official agency position on climate forecasting, i.e. we didn't know enough to forecast climate change or mankind's effect on it. Hansen thus embarrassed NASA by coming out with his claims of global warming in 1988 in his testimony before Congress. Nothing happened because he was supposed to do that. And this guy from NASA, John Theon, also goes on about Gore. Gore faces a much different scientific climate in 2009 than the one he faced in 2006 when his film An Inconvenient Truth was released. According to satellite data, the Earth has cooled since Gore's film was released. Antarctic sea ice extent has grown to record levels, sea level rise has slowed, ocean temperatures have failed to warm, and more scientists have publicly declared their dissent from man-made climate fears as peer-reviewed studies continue to counter warming fears. This very week, this world expert in sea level rise has said, despite fluctuations down as well as up, the sea is not rising. It hasn't risen in 50 years. And quite apart from examining the hard evidence, the elementary laws of physics, latent heat needed to melt ice, tells us that the apocalypse conjured up by Al Gore and company couldn't possibly come about. And this is interesting too. He said this, the same man. When asked to act as an expert reviewer on the International Panel of Climate Change's last two reports, he was astonished to find that not one of their 22 contributing authors on sea levels was a sea level specialist, not one. Yet the results of all this deliberate ignorance, absolutely, and reliance on rigged computer models have become the most powerful single driver of the entire warmist hysteria. And we're still getting this a few weeks ago as a publicity stunt going down the River Thames. That sums it up for me. There you go. That's what it's all about. Bullshit. And what has Obama done? What are governments all around the world doing? They are appointing people